at NCTIES Fall Virtual Conference 2024 for the session called Revitalizing Instructional Coaching, Practical Strategies, Models, and Essential Tools for Digital Learning. My name is Jacqueline Stevens. I am the Interim Director for the Professional Learning and Leading Collaborative at the Friday Institute for Educational Innovation out of NC State University's College of Ed. And our work was really tied to creating professional development programs and tools and strategies for educators across North Carolina and beyond. So if you're not familiar with the Friday Institute, we are where policy, practice, and research combine. And there's a lot of different things that we do. As my team, we will look at digital literacy, computer science, learning agency, strategic planning, capacity building, coaching support, and really going in and collaborating with educators to figure out what is the need and what can we do and what can we co-create to help serve educators and ultimately students. So I am curious, you're here today for a reason. You signed in and joined this session, and our focus today is instructional coaching. So my question for you is, you know, what is your instructional role, and how many years have you been in that role? That's going to help me guide our conversation today. And feel free to add, if you would like, where you're joining us from. Thank you for sharing. And as you are adding that information, I'm going to be adding a link to the slides for this session in our chat. You can also see that link up in the upper corner of the slide deck you're viewing. This is going to allow you after today to go back and look at a lot of these rich resources. So grab that slide link, bookmark it now, and have your chat open because I will also be adding in some resources there. So what defines a coach? I work with a lot of instructional coaches. I've been doing this work with the Friday Institute for over 15 years. And when I sit down and I work with instructional coaches, I really want to know how they define themselves because there's never the same definition. And I like going a step further with those coaches and really getting them to consider themselves more of a catalyst. So we know coach, we train people, we teach others. We support and guide others, individuals and groups in areas, in our case, of professional and personal development. But I believe that coaches are truly catalysts in their work and what they do. And to help guide this conversation, here's a great activity that you can take and run with. It's actually an activity that uses the block party protocol, which is a great pedagogical strategy. So I'll ask my coaches, what is a catalyst? And getting them to think of how they would define this word. And to do so, there is a list of quotes from other catalysts, from everywhere from education, industry, innovation. And I invite them to look at those quotes and to select one, write it down, reflect on why is that one resonating with them, and then capture all of these thoughts and reflections in writing. And then together they share their quotes, they discuss, and they kind of co-develop what a definition is. And they keep kind of checking in with others for what was your quote? Why did you choose it? How does this connect with being a catalyst, being a coach? And together we define and create our own unique definition. And in this case, here you can see a catalyst. It's an agent that provokes, speeds significant change or action. And it is a person that precipitates an event, a happening. We are encouraging others. We are making something different or a change and encouraging others. And I truly believe that's what we do as instructional coaches. So how are we getting others to contribute to new thinking and ideas and inspire not only us, but everyone involved whenever possible? So that's a great way. I love starting out my conversations with coaches in that way because we're transforming K-12 education. We're kind of used to saying digital age, but it's always changing and growing. And we play a pivotal role in guiding those that we support to integrate technology in ways that enhance student learning, be it personalization, engagement strategies. And by working alongside these educators, we can help create this dynamic student-centered classroom where digital tools amplify creativity, collaboration, critical thinking. And this is a real bridge between technology and pedagogy, where instructional coaches empower educators to navigate the evolving landscape of digital learning, ensuring that technology is not just an add-on, but a powerful driver for that instructional excellence and innovation. So if that's something of interest to you, you've got some things to check out, some protocols and some resources that you can take and run with. Because please, please, please don't reinvent the wheel. Take all these ideas and make them your own. So our goals for this session is a lot of things. Understanding key coaching models and frameworks, discussing kind of essential tools and resources, how they support our practice, and kind of gaining tools to create a single point rubric, in this case for blended learning environments, but really a single point rubric that you can apply that lens to whatever you're working on with those that you support. We're also going to be talking about how do we strategically use data to support our coaching and overall enhancing our coaching strategies to foster that high quality digital learning. So I've got a lot of information and things to share with you today. I might be going pretty fast, but remember, you have all these slides at your disposal with links, and you have my contact information. So you can always check in, and please, please do continue to ask questions and reflect as we talk today and even beyond. So coaching frameworks and models. And again, like I said, I'm super stubborn. I threw in more little nuggets and resources for you along the way. So when we're thinking of types of coaching, there's so many. I've just grabbed a handful of types of coaching here, along with the names of kind of who is best known for talking about them. And these names are probably going to look pretty familiar with you, depending on how long you've been an instructional coach. And if you're new to coaching, these names are ones you're definitely going to want to check out and investigate more. So cognitive coaching, we are looking at improving the thinking process of educators by fostering self-reflection in that particular model. The goal is to help teachers become more self-directed and independent in their instructional strategies. So key elements of this are building rapport and using reflective questioning, promoting self-assessment, and encouraging teachers to think critically about their own decisions. So whereas that focus is really on teacher autonomy and self-reflection, instructional coaching is a little bit different. And this is widely been used and developed by Jim Knight. He's been around for a long time, and he's really a go-to for many, many coaches. And that work focuses on working collaboratively with teachers to improve specific teaching strategies that are going to impact student learning. Coaches use the data and the evidence-based practices to support those instructional changes. And I see on here, Juana just said she met Jim at ISTE. Oh, I am jealous. I am jealous that you got to do that. That's awesome. He's kind of a legend, isn't he? And so the instructional coaching focus there is on collaboration, goal setting, identifying instructional strategies. And I've seen in a lot of cases using video observations to help provide feedback. So that's really focused on practical application of strategies to improve student outcomes. But then you have transformational coaching, and we see this in a lot of Elena Aguilar's work, where she's emphasizing and addressing both the technical or instructional, as well as the adaptive kind of mindsets and beliefs that come to the coaching and mentoring relationship and dynamic, and the changes that are necessary for really deep instructional improvement. And this acknowledges both the emotional and social dynamics that influence our teachers' growth. So that will include building trust, challenging beliefs. It incorporates a lot of emotional intelligence and equity-focused conversations, and also fostering kind of personal transformation, not only as coach, but for those we support. So it's holistic teacher growth, addressing both mindset and instructional skills. Now, Diane Sweeney, she's known for student-centered coaching. This model shifts to focusing from improving teacher practice to directly impacting student learning. Coaches work with teachers to set goals based on student data and measure the effectiveness of those instructional changes on those student outcomes. So it's very data-driven, based on goal setting, collaborative, and focused on student evidence, and kind of iterative cycles of coaching. This is going to improve student learning outcomes and enhance teacher practices overall. My last one on my list here is coaching, collaborative coaching. Lucy West is credited with a lot of this work, and this model emphasizes collaborative inquiry and co-teaching between coaches and teachers, where the coach is working really closely with the teacher and jointly plans lessons, delivers instructions, and reflects on teaching practice. The coach is the partner, offering guidance while learning alongside the teacher. So there's lots of co-teaching, reflective dialogue, shared ownership of outcomes, and collaborative inquiry. So this is a focus on, problem solving and improvement and of teaching practices through that partnership. There are many, many different types beyond these, but really what I gravitate to is a little bit of everyone's, all of these. So my personal favorite is what I like to call blended coaching. It is taking all the best pieces of these types and combining them together. And depending on how long you've been an instructional coach, you're probably kind of taking a little bit from each of these and kind of a la carte in our coaching. And so we are taking the combining instructional, facilitative, and collaborative coaching techniques to meet the diverse needs of our teachers and use a combination of consulting, mentoring, and reflecting, depending on the teacher's situation and the context of their professional goals and the learning environment. So this is a very flexible, adaptive coaching style, and again, really focused on mentorship and goal setting. So this is going to address those specific needs that the teacher has with a mix of all of the strategies that I've just outlined. And again, one of the things I mentioned is I'm going to throw little nuggets of resources and ideas in here. So when I am with instructional coaches doing a training for the first time, or even when I'm just with educators, I find it really helpful to understand why they're at that table. Why do you love coaching? Or what kind of things get you into that school building every day to do your job? And to help kind of get a pulse check of who is in the room and why they're in the room, I do kind of two activities in tandem. One is thinking about how to explain your purpose. What's your why? And it is an oldie but a goodie. Simon Sink's TED Talk about the golden circle of how we kind of communicate our whys to other people. And we often communicate that by saying, here's what I do, here's how I do it, and here's why I do it. But when we flip the communication and talk about why we do what we do, how we do what we do, and then what, our brains, something happens to our brains, and our limbic brain goes, I really want more of that. They do it in advertising all the time. So I ask educators to think about their why they do what they do, because certainly, the fame and the money that comes with this role is just not enough. So why do they do what they do? And to help also foster that, I'll do an activity that I call 10 words. And what I love about it is it's totally customizable for the conversation that you want to have with those that you support. So my 10 words activity, every school has a mission statement, right? You all have a mission statement, and it's really passionate. It's got lots of great education-ese words in it. But what are the 10 words after that? How are you going to make that mission happen or that vision kind of come to fruition? So for example, I'll ask educators or coaches or administrators, whoever's in the room, to finish the statements that I start. And with those answers, we can start to co-develop and create our why statements and our professional reasons as to why we do what we do. So for example, schools should help students become. What are the 10 words after that? Digital age learning and teaching means that I have to let go of. And when they complete these statements, not only am I, as the facilitator, getting a sense of who is in the room, what's the pulse, what's the fear factors going on, what are they thinking of? I'm getting that in real time, in quick time, using tools like digital chats where I could see, or a Padlet where they can add their answers in one space so I can holistically see everybody's answers. And it's also great conversation to have with the whole group. So I just wanted to throw that into the mix. This is a great resource to kind of help spark some of getting to know who you are working with, and also kind of quickly assessing what kind of coaching model or strategy do I want to use. Likewise, I mentioned the work of Elena Aguilar, and she takes a very social emotional approach to how we coach and how that can really help those we support. So I was actually doing this activity for a while, and then I saw her version of it, and I'm have to share in the slides. You can see the link to the slides in the upper corner as well as in the chat. She created a great list of values, and with the link there for the simple exercise, guides you through how do you get a group of educators thinking through what are their professional values, because that's going to also explain why they do what they do. But when we have a common foundation of our values as a community, we can make more progress. So I ask educators to circle 10 values on the list, then hone those down to 5, and then hone those even further down to 3. And this is a great exercise that is going to highlight and help them really focus on what shared values are there and what values are different. And once we have an understanding of those, when we are working collaboratively, it actually has a great impact on our working teams and informs me as a coach. So 2 little nuggets of activities there embedded in your slides. So going a step further, I also mentioned there's lots of coaching models. Oh my goodness. And they're all acronyms because we know we love that as educators. But in the world of coaching, there's such a variety that we can use to support our educators. And it really depends on what works for you as a coach and what works best for you in the context of the environment that you're doing your coaching in. So I want to briefly highlight these 4 very popular coaching models: Clear, Grow, Oscar, and SMART. I'm happy to start with SMART at the bottom. We're probably most familiar with that. We talk about making SMART goals all of the time. It's very familiar to the educators that we may be working with as well. Um, it's heavily structured around creating clear, measurable goals. And it's ideal when we need like a precise or really tangible outcome. And it's used not only for coaching, but also just for project management and performance evaluations. So it's probably the most common one on this list because it's used in industry as well. And so it's a great place to start with educators who may not be used to these kinds of models. But despite their differences, all these models share kind of a common foundation. They're all goal-oriented. They help individuals define and achieve specific objectives. And where it's setting goals, like in the GROW model, or identifying outcomes in the OSCAR model, or even working through those SMART goals that I mentioned, the models ensure that the focus is on progress and achievement. So additionally, all 4 emphasize the importance of action and review. And in each model, we move from defining goals to creating these actionable steps and regularly reviewing that process to ensure that we have some continual growth. And yes, I see on there in our chat, yes, setting goals can be really difficult for teachers. So I love that these models can help create kind of a framework to guide them through the process. And again, you're going to know your folks better and which one of these might make more sense. So some key differences with these models. The CLEAR model is more holistic. It emphasizes not only the action, but also this deep exploration and reflection. It's particularly useful when coaching educators who need to explore their values or beliefs alongside the goals that you are developing together. Now, on the other hand, GROW is a more solutions-focused model. It guides the individual step by step through goal setting and problem solving, which can be really great in a classroom setting for both educators and students. Now, OSCAR, this one is unique because it focuses on outcomes and solutions. So depending on the context and who you're working with, maybe this is a fit. It's making it particularly effective for professional development conversations that focus on performance improvement. And I already mentioned the SMART goals as being kind of one of those that people are very familiar with. They've heard of it before, and those models can be super helpful. So I'm dropping into the chat, and this is linked to the slides, but there's just so many more models. There's a link there if you want to, if this is interesting to you and you want to learn more, you can dig into that there. And if you're interested in learning more about these specific models, there's a link there that kind of helps break them down. And of course, if you have any questions at all, you can always reach out. I'm always interested in how people structure these or how they think through what it's like to be a coach. And some of these are going to fit great in the situation when you need it. And other times, maybe it's not going to be a fit, and that's okay. But there's just so many models and interesting things out there. And you may be very interested to find that some of the things that you're doing already has a name. You just didn't know you were doing it. So, and of course, a really quick shout out to some of my favorite frameworks. Now, if you saw me yesterday, I did a workshop for NCTIES specifically around these frameworks. And you can go back and look at the recording later if you want to kind of dig into the details. I'm going to do a really, really quick overview. But as an instructional coach, these are two foundational frameworks that I always talk about with any of the educators I'm working with, regardless of their role, when I talk about digital learning and teaching. So the first is the TPACK framework. Now, this is the TPACK model. As you can, if you Google it, this is what it looks like. I'm going to be super honest with you. My feedback and research says that educators don't like this model. They don't like it's, they say it's too confusing. It's too complicated. But I love my job because I get to make these kinds of research and models tangible and relatable and more purposeful. So I get to translate this model, and this is our translation. We've simplified it so much more. And really thinking about this as where does our content knowledge, what we know about what we teach, our pedagogical knowledge, how we want our students to learn and our knowledge about those pedagogical strategies, and then our technology knowledge. What tools and resources do I know that I have in my resource, at my, what I have to use as a resource and in the context of my learning for a given lesson or for a given class, for a different group. So I added to the chat if you need a little refresher on TPAC. That is what is the quick review link on the slides. And this is all about making really good choices and just really thinking through our choices when we are designing lessons. And as a coach, I will sit with an educator and I'll ask, tell me more about your comfort level of this content knowledge. Tell me more about your comfort level, your pedagogical strategies. Do you have like 3 or 4 that you always go back to, or do we need to kind of build some of those skills up and give you some new tricks, right? And you'll notice the circles on the TPAC model that we've created are different sizes because in the context of the learning situation, those circles are going to expand and grow and might shrink depending on what your knowledge is. And that's okay. This is really a tool to self-assess and think about the decisions that you're making when integrating technology with purpose. Another framework that I just love is the SAMR model. Let me know if you've heard of the SAMR model before. Yes, this has been around for a while. And the idea and concept is to take this model, which stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition, and really thinking about how are we integrating the technology rigorously. Now, if you've seen the traditional model, there's a line between the augmentation and modification. And the idea that was put out there into the world was that you needed to teach above the line. Well, that doesn't make sense. And if you're interested, I did my own spin on the SAMR model with a little video that explains this in more detail, that we are swimming the technology waters and we have to swim laps back and forth between all the layers of the SAMR model because some days substitution is where I need to be in the shallow end of the pool because that's what's going to serve my learners best. And occasionally I can swim out to the deeper end for that redefinition when I'm integrating technology. But if I stay there all the time and the expectation is that I'm always transforming instruction and redefining and teaching above that line, well, I'm gonna burn out and I'm gonna sink, right? And we saw that with teachers in our observations and in our research. So it's an idea that we have to swim laps back and forth this model, just as we do with Bloom's taxonomy, to make the concerted choices that our lesson needs for the given context of the learning. And I always get educators asking me, How do I know where I am on the SAMR model? And I love sharing this SAMR flow chart with administrators so they can kind of wrap their head around what this model is. Because a few teachers get hung up on like where they land in the SAMR model. I personally think, well, it doesn't matter because you kind of have a sense of where you are. But this flow chart does two things. First, it does actually validate that non-use of technology is a choice, and you can make that decision because sometimes that's the decision that the lesson needs for a given day. Also, it really does help break up if the instructional choices I've made could be done with or without technology. Um, Maybe that's substitution. Or if this like partially it kind of does that. Okay, I'm at augmentation. I can, go follow through my flow chart. If there's been an instructional activity that's designed such that technology brings this transformational learning opportunity, I'm like, yeah, sort of. Okay, modification or absolutely. Well, I'm at redefinition. So this is a great way to kind of sit down and talk through what this model means with educators. And as a coach, I use this also as a self-reflective tool. The SAMR framework and the TPAC model are not evaluative. Let me say that again. They're not evaluative. I have seen it used as an evaluative tool, but the whole purpose is to build a common language of reflection on our practice and what we're implementing and supporting as a coach. So we use these tools are shared with admins so they can understand it. We use these tools with our educators so they can visually see kind of the decision-making process that they're already doing when they're designing lessons. And as a coach, if I see an educator is they're doing great with technology, but it's substitution pretty much every day. Well, that's a red flag for me that I need to go in and I need to see what other supports can I give that educator and what can we talk about to level up and build some of those skills so they can try a few different things with the technology. Just as if I see a teacher who is redefining every day their lessons with technology and they look like a rock star, as a coach, I'm going to go in and make sure they're okay because we've seen in research that they burn out, right? I mentioned that. So how are they doing? Because that's really difficult to sustain. And think about the students too. They also have to meet that all of that redefinition on a regular basis. So it's a balance, it's a flow. Just as we go up and down blooms, we're going to go up and down SAMR. So again, really quickly to kind of wrap this up, like I said, if you're interested in more details about these models, you can see my recording from yesterday from NCTIES Fall Virtual Conference. But TPAC ensures that technology supports both the pedagogical goals and the content knowledge, emphasizing the balance between these teaching methods, the subject matter, and the technology tools. Meanwhile, SAMR is kind of looks at how deeply technology is being embedded in the lesson, from simple substitution to task redefinition. And together they provide kind of a complete picture. I like using both of these models together. And I've seen some coaches say, I like that one over this one. I don't use that. I use this. That's fine. I like using both of these because they do different things. SAMR shows how far you've integrated the technology, and TPAC ensures that it's been done in a way that is enhancing teaching and learning with purpose and not throwing technology in for technology's sake. So I'm curious, I've been talking for a little bit, but I want to give you a chance to ask in the chat, what's coming up for you? What's sparking? What are you thinking about? Do you have any questions? Do you have any pushback? Because all are valid. And I love to always pause when I do instructions with educators to ask this question because I never know what I'm going to get, and it leads to some great conversations. So if you've got some questions, definitely feel free to add them in the chat. Now, a lot of times I'll talk with coaches about data, and that can be scary because data, there's just so much of it. And it can be overwhelming, and you're already doing so much as a coach. So, how do we hone in on the data points that we most need? And I have created here a sampling of all the data that we could possibly check out. And I actually got this from a collaborative article on LinkedIn where coaches were kind of talking about what kind of data they were using, why they were using it, where they were getting it. And as instructional coaches, we need to leverage various types of data to guide and refine our practice. Um, this article I just mentioned, where I got this from, it outlined these several key data types that can inform our work. So the first is the qualitative data. I mean, that's classroom observations, teacher reflections, interviews. That data is going to allow us to understand the unique challenges of the context that that teacher is facing, and helping us personalize our coaching support. It's also really critical for capturing that nuance, like their teaching style or the classroom dynamics and the student engagement that's happening in that class. And we know that, data numbers alone can't capture that. So then we also have the qualitative insights, and that's providing the measurable indicators such as the test scores, um, the student attendance, behavioral records, like those are the numbers. And we can analyze those if we need to and use that as a metric to assess the impact of our coaching interventions on student outcomes and track trends or gaps in our teaching practices. Formative data, well, we collect that throughout our coaching cycles with the educators we support. It plays a vital role in adjusting our coaching strategies in real time. So it might be in the form of check-ins or feedbacks. I really like self-evaluations. It takes the pressure off, right? And this data helps ensure that our coaching is responsive, and it's evolving to meet the needs of the educators that we support. So at the end of every coaching cycle, I'm curious, do you have kind of summative data that you collect? This can be kind of post assessments or surveys to ask for feedback, evaluate the overall success of your coaching efforts. And that data is going to help us reflect on the effectiveness of our interventions. I also add in here ethical data. And so we may not use this term. Elena Aguilar, who I mentioned earlier, in her social emotional approach to coaching, this is connected to that. Our responsibility to collect and handle data in a way that respects the privacy and dignity of both our teachers and our students. This is going to build trust and ensure that our work as a coach aligns with those professional standards. And lastly, actionable data. It's just crucial. It drives meaningful changes for teachers' practice. We need to focus on data that not only highlights the issues, but also informs really specific and practical strategies for improvement. And by using this actionable data, we can tailor our coaching interventions to individual goals for our educators and kind of broader objectives for our schools and districts. So as you're looking at these circles, again, kind of like the TPAC model, some of these circles bigger for you, you're like, yes, I'm doing that. Or, oh, that circle's kind of small. I don't know if I am doing that. And again, it's a combination of all of this information that we do as a coach. And I wanted to visually represent that and also validate you're doing a lot with data, whether you realize it or not. And it is so important. And I hope that you get to highlight that for those that you support and work with as well, because they don't realize sometimes what we do as a coach. And if we can take the opportunity to stop and explain, as your coach, these are the things I'm looking at. This is why I'm looking at it. And everything goes back to supporting you as the educator. It may actually improve some of the data that you collect once we have those conversations with those we support and kind of break down what we do and why we do it. So as a coach, our work is very complex. It's very layered, right? We are constantly working on, and these are just few bullets that came to my mind, right? We're identifying school and district needs for professional learning. We're gathering insights. We're gaining expertise and leveraging our own expertise. We're creating a culture of coaching and ongoing learning. We are also trying to build our own capacity in professional development, like today. But most of all, we really know that we want to meet I'll say learners, our staff, our colleagues, those we're supporting, where they are. And one great tool to help do that is the concerns-based adoption model. Let me know if in the chat you have heard of this one. This is a simple tool, and I'm going to drop in a link in the chat. It's just kind of like a worksheet. and it's like a self-reflective form. The CBAM model basically takes human nature and kind of puts it on a map across these seven concern stages. So whenever we learn something new, um, we have a concern. So if I say, I'm sorry, I'm so late to facilitate this webinar today, I was in a car accident. Your concern might be, oh my gosh, are you okay? And I go, oh, you're a lovely person, right? You're concerned for my well-being. But as soon as I say, no, I'm fine, but I was driving your car, what's your concern now? It changes, it shifts. Once we get more information, our stages of concern are going to change. So when we think about this as a coach, when we say we have a new initiative, or here's a new tool, or here's a new process, or here's a new program, our staff is going to go, I have a concern, right? And the first being just awareness. If someone's not aware, they're not really interested, right? And so as soon as they have some information, they want to know more. What is this all about? It kind of comes from self, and that's very much human nature or personal. How is this going to impact me? What do I have to do? How much time is this going to take? When am I going to do it? So there's a lot of I statements in that concern. But as soon as we give them that information, they can kind of grow past that concern into more management. Well, what does this look like in my learning environment? Do I have to change the way that I teach? This is very task oriented. All the task questions start coming up. Once we give enough information about the task questions and give them some stability around the process this is going to take, we get into the bottom end here of our concerns-based adoption model, 5, 6, and 7, where it's more about impact. How are my learners going to react? Is it going to help their learning? Where others can I work with collaboratively on this? How can I scale this? How can we make this better? How can we grow this? And really, as a coach, isn't that the sweet spot? Right? When we're getting people to the collaborative and refocusing area, and we're moving away from the, how's this going to affect me? Is there a consequence to this? Into how can we make this even better? How can we continue to make that impact? So I like sharing this model with coaches because it's a great way to kind of go like, where are my folks at right now? And some people may be at very different places, but we want to move them forward. And sometimes we've been there. We're given an initiative or a project or information about a program, and some of the stuff is missing, and we get stuck in that personal space, or we get stuck in the consequences, and we can't move beyond it. So if you take a look at that worksheet, you can make a copy. And I've had both coaches and assistant principals, admins, like, what are you hearing? And can you identify maybe where they're at on this model? And then oh, I need to give more information. I need to give more support. So again, another like quick resource that you could find really super helpful. In addition to that, and again, grab the link to our slides. This is for viewing later. I share these 6 coaching soft skill resources with coaches, and they're really great to self-reflect as a coach where you're at, but I also share them back with teachers because they really love, like, listening stumbling blocks is a huge one. Are you often thinking about what you're going to say as a coach? And not listening to the person who's telling you what they need? I'm guilty of that, where I'm already thinking of how can I solve this? What can I do? What can I say? And I'm not completely there listening and being there with them in that moment of support. Also, if you're having conflict or you have someone that's difficult to work with, there's some stems for healthy conflict linked to this slide as well. So lots of really cool little nuggets of information here. I highly encourage you to, again, bookmark these slides, go back when you have time to like kind of sit with some of this. And if you're just joining us a little late, I'm stubborn. I throw everything in here for you guys. So hopefully you're going to find something that's going to resonate and work for you. Kind of winding down to the end of this, I've got a couple more things to share with you. And again, kind of an obvious one. As an instructional coach, we can't coach and support people unless we're pointing them toward a target and we define that target. So I'm curious how many of you have worked with single point rubrics before. Single point rubrics are something I wish that as a classroom teacher, I had been more aware of. I probably would have used them a lot more. Single point rubric was developed as an alternative to the traditional rubrics that often have a scale from 1 to 4 or 5. And it's offering a simpler, more focused approach to kind of assessment or goal setting. So unlike traditional rubrics that list multiple levels of performance, kind of excellent, good, needs improvement, this single point rubric outlines only the targeted performance criteria in the middle column. So instead of prescribing levels of performance, we're focusing on what we want to accomplish and on the specific feedback of how we can either exceed or fall short of that criteria. So the design promotes a deeper engagement with feedback and encourages more personalized learning and self-assessment. So I've dropped into the chat, and if you're following along in the slides, there's a single point rubric template that we share all the time with educators. And we highly encourage that you sit down and collaborate with those that you work with on, how to fill this out. So for example, I have here on the slide, sitting with a group and saying, what do we mean when we say personalized learning? What's the criteria for that? And we brainstorm and we hone in, we hone down what the standards are for performance. So as a coach, if I'm looking and I'm observing you as a teacher for your personalized learning strategies, well, as a teacher, do you know what I'm really looking for? Have I shared this information with you in advance? Or is it just this word we're throwing around and I'm hoping you know what I mean? So in this example, and again, this is just like a little mini version of it. Yours would probably be much more extensive and go deeper as you collaborate with colleagues to develop your own. But in this example, we're just breaking out what are the pieces we're truly looking for? What's important to the school district, to the school culture? What are goals that maybe I'm even working on with a particular set of teachers or with an individual teacher? And co-creating a single point rubric helps us point all of those efforts to a target that we're working on, and that can be hugely beneficial. Now we're almost at time, but I do want to share my very final favorite thing. And we know that managing change is complex. Managing all of these things as a coach is complex. And I often close my sessions with coaches and asking them to come up with one really big goal that they have. And then I ask, what's a roadblock? What's standing in your way? I also say time and money doesn't count because we always want more of that. But what's standing in your way from achieving that big goal that you have? And then I share with them Noster's framework for managing complex change. So, excuse me, the Noster model. And if you've heard of this, let me know in chat. So the idea of the Noster model, there's many different versions of this. It's been updated over time, but I like the really simple one that I've shown you here. And the idea is that this simple equation equals success, solid vision, skills. I have incentives in place. My resources are available. There's a clear action plan. We are on the road to success here. However, whoops. And if you click on it in the slides, it's going to open up the model for you. However, what happens when one of those pieces are missing? What happens when one of these pieces meets our roadblock that we've identified? And that can lead to a lot of different outcomes, as you can see here. And they're all emotion based. So you can see frustration, resistance, anxiety, confusion, false starts. As a coach, it might be easier to identify the feelings versus the thing that is missing. So when I ask coaches to combine their goal with their perceived roadblock, and then what's the missing piece? If they can identify the missing piece or even the emotion, then as a coach, I know that there's something I can do. I have a place to start. So if I'm working with someone, they're very frustrated, I'm going to take a look at their resources. What do they have available to them? If as a coach, gosh, I feel like I'm constantly starting over again and again and again and again. Well, it's time to go back to that action plan. If I'm working with an educator and I'm just observing and hearing a lot of anxiety, well, let's focus on building some of those skills up and see if that's a change that toward improvement, toward that success that we're looking for. So I love sharing this with educators. I share this with my students. What a skill to be able to identify what you need and advocate for it when you're managing any kind of change. And I've shared this with industry folks, educators. I've shared this with my own kids and my husband. What's the missing piece? And how can we combat it? It's such a useful and helpful skill. So again, think about what's coming up for you. What thoughts, what questions, and what pushback. And I would love for you to give me some feedback on all the things that I've shared with you today, because that is how I best learn and grow. I've added the link in the chat. And of course, if you've got any questions at all, please feel free to reach out. You have my contact information. I love talking with educators and really talking about, what are the pain points, supports that you need. That's my job. I get to design and develop what you need to make your lives easier. So please reach out and know that the Professional Learning and Leading Collaborative and the Friday Institute is here to support you. So I appreciate your time today and choosing this session, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today at the NCTIES virtual conference. This was an amazing session. I learned so much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
It was wonderful.